and running on a Monday evening. The Sweet 16 is set. We've got draft movement. We've got gambling allegations in Major League Baseball. We got a whole lot to get into. That gentleman right there, Jonathan Von Tobel. I am Tim Murray. Mr. Von Tobel, it's a good weekend for the Faves. 15-1 straight up, 11-5 against the spread. Gambling is easy. Just pick the favorite, and they're going to win. That's apparently what happened, unless you're Baylor, and that won't happen. Then you'll lose outright to Clemson, or just pick an ACC team, because outside of Virginia, they've done a pretty good job, as they have 25% of the Sweet 16. A lot to get to. We got lines, but as we quickly just think back to what we saw this weekend, and later on in this show, we're going to take a look at all of the final scores versus what the folks at Shot Quality believe those final scores were. But JVT, when you look at Saturday, Sunday, all together, spinning it ahead to Thursday and Friday, those Sweet 16 matchups, was there anything glaring, obvious, a light going off in the top of your head moment from this weekend?
I don't really think so. I mean, because you can look at this overall, right, and say, okay, favorites had a really good weekend, so of course we got to keep writing favorites as you move forward. Or you could do what I'm doing and kind of viewing it as isolated incidents over the course of 2 days. Okay, favorites happen to win and cover at a pretty high rate. I don't think that is representative of what this tournament is going to be as we move forward. And I think that's kind of the important thing, is you just don't want to overreact to a very small sample size of results, which is ultimately, 16 games that we're discussing here when we're talking about these favorites coming in. I mean, case in point, right, we talked about in the first few days, Thursday, Friday, about these big underdogs having big first halves and then coming back and getting absolutely smoked in the second halves. Not necessarily dogs in the first half covering and then fading the rest of the way, and that's not necessarily what played out. So I think for me, that's the big one. I don't think you're doing this, especially, Tim, when you're talking about multiple days off in between games, venue changes for all of these spots now. I think that you view those in their own separate view, like in their own separate lens, and then you move on to next weekend. I don't think you want to roll into this weekend saying, let's ride the favorites, baby, because they did it this last weekend. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of teams that you look at the performance that they had and looking ahead and how it'll all play out when you look at a team like Alabama, who shot poorly from three, but as did their opponent. I mean, 72-61, easily going under a massive total. The belief was, understandably so, you've got this up-tempo team in Grand Canyon, up-tempo team in Alabama. Well, let's look at the over. Well, maybe it was a market way too overreaction because that game, flew under. Gonzaga, are they as good as what we saw against Kansas, or was it a great shooting performance, a la the West Coast Conference Tournament, when they could not miss in the second half against San Francisco? Then they played St. Mary's, and they came back down to earth. So it is really intriguing, but here we have it. It is not too many underdogs alive, only one double-digit seed, as that trend continues, 16 consecutive years that we've had a double-digit seed in the Sweet 16, but the only one is NC State. We also have ones and twos in the fully intact for the first time since 2019, so it wasn't that long ago. But yeah, it is going to be fascinating. I'm excited for this Sweet 16. Let's just be honest. I like to be as honest as possible. I had a terrible weekend. It was horrible. Everything that I touched turned to a loss, pretty much. An in-game bet on Baylor, and you've got a 82% free throw shooter at the line down two, and he misses both free throws. A team in Baylor missing the front end of all three 1-and-1s. Even in the Dayton game, where I took 10 or 9 with Dayton, and they missed the front end of multiple 1-and-1s, and then they get their shot blocked as Arizona was fighting hard, I guess, to get that cover. So such is life. We bounce back and kind of stick to the process. But it was a rough one, to say the least, over the weekend. But I'm sure plenty of people out there perspired as they nailed it with some money line parlays. I know the books did not have a good weekend. And then honestly, I fell for it. I wrote it up on Sunday. James Madison. I liked what I saw against Wisconsin. I did not bet that game on Friday night. It felt like, all right, the popular dog here, James Madison, they go out, they look absolutely the part. They turned Wisconsin over a season-high 19 times, and Duke came out and absolutely bullied James Madison. So when I look at that game, JVT, moving forward, Duke and Houston needs overtime to hold on to beat Texas A&M, and then you've got this Duke team that played exceptionally well. Where is the reality? Do we believe that Duke is kind of ascending, and maybe Houston, when you look at their last 3 games, blown out by Iowa State, dominates the 16 seed. Congratulations in Longwood. And then you hold on for dear life against Texas A&M, a team that matchup-wise was pretty tricky in how much they attacked the glass, but still for them to need overtime and barely survive. This matchup, I think, is going to catch a lot of intrigue, considering it's also the last game of the Sweet 16, that late-night Friday night slate.
Yeah, I think you could probably make that argument. I also think when you look at Houston, too, you mentioned, for me, what was the key. Texas A&M was kind of a tough matchup, right? When you look at their ability to, as we've called it, dump and chase on offense, just chuck up shots, grab offensive rebounds, kill you on the glass, really force the issue within 4 feet of the basket, which they did a tremendous job at, generated 45 free throws. There's quite a few of them. So probably going to make an argument with 16 free throws. You probably should come out of this thing with the victory.
Shot quality said they should.
Yeah, right. And then for Houston themselves, they shot 32% from 3. Generally, you should probably shoot a little bit better. And I think we know that they can shoot a little bit better. So I think when you look at that, it's a tough one. They win, they move on. But sometimes that's what happens in the NCAA tournament. And when you move on to a next matchup where you can maybe match up a little bit better with a team like Duke potentially, I think maybe I don't want to take too much out of what Houston did in that matchup against Texas A&M. And just like with everything else that we've watched, for example, I watched San Diego State pummel Yale after I bet 5.5 with the Bulldogs. And then when that number opened up, I laid it with UConn. So, I think that this is where...
Sharp card, by the way. That thing is going up and up and up.
Yeah, I mean, and I was on with Will Hill on his podcast, late last night, right when the game's ended, we talked a little bit about it. But I think when you look at, game to game, especially in a single site, neutral site tournament where you're moving venues, I really try to kind of isolate each one of these games and move on to the next as a kind of a fresh set. Especially, you mentioned this when we talked about this the other day when we were hanging out after a show, which was just look, we're going to get a full week, or not a full week, but we're going to get 3 or 4 days between games. These lines are going to mature. These teams are going to get rested. You're going to game plan for squads as well. You generally don't get this time to prepare and rest and get ready for these opponents. And I think that's what makes these so interesting and why you focus so much more on matchups as opposed to what happened in their last game.
Yeah. Now, flipping over to the other side of the bracket in Alabama, North Carolina, I think this is a phenomenal matchup. I took some Grand Canyon plus the 6 and didn't get home, but then I look at how that game unfolded. Grand Canyon, 2 of 20 from 3, 23 of 37 from the free throw line. Alabama could not hit their normal shots. They only shot 25%, so it goes both ways. So I'm not going to say, I was completely hosed here. But no, I think Houston and Duke, and we'll get into that as we get into the best bets portion of the show. That's one initially that caught my eye from the Houston standpoint, where they survived. This is a physical team. Last year in the second round of the NCAA tournament, we saw a physical team play Duke, and Duke obviously got knocked out by Tennessee by 12. Tennessee, another team that certainly is intriguing as well. All right, a couple other notes and stories that we're going to be keeping an eye on. Obviously, we got an NBA slate today that we will get to as the first hour goes on. As always, our first hour of the program is completely free on YouTube, youtube.com/VSiN Live. Stream that first hour. Also, you can listen always for free on vsin.com and on the app. But J.J. McCarthy steam is a-coming for the number 2 overall pick. We'll get to why on the other side of the break. He is down now to plus 550 to go number 2. He was 18-1 a couple hours ago. 18-1 now at plus 550. Shohei Otani just spoke to the media. You were listening in a little bit. Anything of note, of substance from the statement that Shohei Otani had to say?
Nothing really. I think everything that we kind of expected, right, in terms of said that he never bet on baseball, really throw his interpreter Ibe under the bus, said, quote, Ibe has been stealing money from my account and has told lies. Quote, all of this has been a complete lie. Another one where he talked about, quote, I never agreed to pay off the debt or make payments to the bookmaker. So this is generally what we expected. We also, of course, the collective we're expecting maybe this is going to be an instance which you can ask questions. Of course not. You just come out, you read a statement, you get out. and they'll probably just bury this and not allow you to ask any questions about it. But now we're just in the investigator's court, which is find out what's going on here with the payments and see if you can stick this to one person or another. But it seems very clear that Otani's camp is very much going in one direction, which is put it all on Ipe. He stole this. He lied. He sent the money. Otani's got nothing to do with it. He even said that he had learned about it in the clubhouse in the first game of the Korea series. So, look, you can believe whatever you want. It's going to be interesting to see what Major League Baseball does. The initial report that Major League Baseball wasn't going to investigate was absolutely ridiculous. Looked bad for them. Looks like they're investigating now. So now we just wait to see what the results are going to be.
Oh, man. It's never a dull time. Love it. We got Sweet 16 lines to break down, a lot of intriguing lines. We've got sound from Danny Hurley, and it almost feels like he's channeling his inner Kirby Smart, which we will get to. By the way, UConn, who now is a 11-point favorite against San Diego State, the only double-digit favorite in the Sweet 16 and the biggest favorite by 4.5 points across the board. UConn, in the last two runs, as they covered against Northwestern on Sunday, obviously covered on Friday night very easily against Stetson, 8-0 straight up, obviously, 8-0 ATS, covering by 13 points per game. Movement aplenty in the NFL draft market, all off of just one little thing said on the NFL Network. We'll play that for you on the other side.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Start betting smarter with the VSiN Pro subscription, folks. You can sign up for a VSiN Pro annual subscription today. Get that first year for less than $200 instead of the typical $240. Just use a promo code PRIME. VSiN Pro Access gets you everything. The daily best bets, our betting splits courtesy of DraftKings. Access, of course, to the March Madness betting hub and our daily write-ups in every single sport every single day. And you're going to need it. You want to know why? Baseball season starts in earnest on Thursday. Come on. Promo code PRIME, PRIME. Get that VSiN Pro annual sub for less than $200. VSiN.com/subscribe.
Tuesday or Wednesday, Mr. Von Tobel, will we do the Von Tobel extravaganza where you're going to give us some season win totals?
Whatever you want. I'm here to serve.
That's your show. It's our show. You want to do Tuesday or Wednesday? You got to pick a day.
Let's do Wednesday.
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 All right. Maybe I'll do my homework. I always do one win total that I get to cheer on all year. So
excited.
I got to pick that one out. So we'll do that.
Ask me again in 3 weeks. When I'm watching and I'm like, oh, God. Like, I got plans on Thursday to go out and, for first pitch and, watch these games and everything like that. And, I feel like even in that day, I'm going to be like, yeah, no, this kind of sucks. But we'll see.
What? The games that you've bet on, the season win totals, or just baseball in general?
I enjoy baseball, but I also understand what it is. It's a really good sport, but at times it can be kind of a drag, especially when you're talking about game 1 of 162. So, you get really excited for it, and then it starts, and then you're in the fourth inning, and, it's 1-0, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay. We got a lot of these left.
Yeah? You can be sitting down at a bar at 10 o'clock Pacific time watching Brewers and Mets.
That's right.
First
I am, actually. As you can see, my sloppily written started my notes.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. We will get our best bets for tonight. We'll go through the NBA card. We'll give some early thoughts. I think JVT has a couple early bets. I put one in the hopper already, but a couple games that, as Femi, our good friend Femi Abebefe, would like to say, I am monitoring. But also something today that was very, very interesting was word out of the league meetings down in Orlando. They're just discussing down there, and we're going to hear from Commanders general manager Adam Peters in a moment. But as many of you know, Washington owns the number 2 overall pick, and they are going to more than likely select a quarterback. And the market has been moving quite a bit, and we've discussed the movement. It opened as Drake May the favorite. Then it was Jaden Daniels, still remains Jaden Daniels the favorite. And then today we saw a massive move in this market. Why? Well, here's a clip from NFL Network, and this is why we've seen that move.
It's been really interesting because everybody's always trying to figure out, especially at the top of the draft, what the other teams are doing. When I've had conversations here with executives for other teams who know Adam Peters well, know the situation well, the most popular answer for what they do at number 2 is J.J. McCarthy.
So let's understand and listen to this clip that was just said via the NFL Network. He didn't say the Commanders like J.J. McCarthy.
Sure.
Should we play it again?
I think we should.
All right, let's play it one more time so people can listen once again. Make sure, listen for the key buzzwords of I am reporting or the Commanders are infatuated with. Just listen to what Mr. Palmer, the reporter here, Jesse Palmer, says about the Commanders, number 2.
It's been really interesting because everybody's always trying to figure out, especially at the top of the draft, what the other teams are doing. When I've had conversations here with executives for other teams who know Adam Peters well, know the situation well, the most popular answer for what they do at number 2 is J.J. McCarthy.
People around the league that know Adam Peters well. And today, the market has moved rapidly with J.J. McCarthy odds to go number 2. When I saw this clip, I immediately went to DraftKings Sportsbook and saw what the odds were. They were 18-1 for McCarthy to go number 2 overall and to the Washington Commanders. At this very second, as I look at it, J.J. McCarthy is now plus 550 to go number 2 and plus 550 to get selected by the Washington Commanders.
Can I read you this report from 2 days ago?
Please.
Quote, the more I've started to ask around, the more it seems like Jaden Daniels is the leader in the clubhouse to be a Commander, from Albert Breer. That was 2 days ago. I don't know why I can't. I don't know why we do this every time.
So, hold on. Adam Peters, he's the general manager of the Washington Commanders.
Right.
Would you like to hear from him?
Sure.
Okay, let's hear from him. Take a listen.
It doesn't sound like a long time, but you get a lot of information in that month, and there's still some of the guys we haven't seen still in person. So we'll go out and do that next week, see a couple more quarterbacks, and then we'll do visits with them. We'll do Zoom calls. We'll do a lot of different things. So we're far from our answer.
No. Is he lying to us? We're far from our answer?
Yes.
He knows it's J.J. McCarthy. People around the league have said it's J.J. McCarthy.
But those people around the league, though, also told Albert Breer that it's Jaden Daniels, though.
No.
The leader in the clubhouse.
So, remind me, Adam Peters is from which organization? The San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers, who a couple years ago traded up to number 3, and we were all convinced they were doing that to select Trey Lance, right? That was what we were told? It was Trey Lance all along.
Yes, always, from day one.
It was never Mac Jones.
Right.
It was never.
Justin Fields actually was favored at 1.2, if you remember. Look, I understand why a market would move, because when you hear something like this, you're going to get an influx of action. So you're probably going, you want to move ahead of that. You don't want a whole bunch of 20 and 18-1s on J.J. McCarthy floating out there and have that build up. So you're going to move pretty quickly off of this, especially if you start to get some of the action. Having said that, as we have discussed ad nauseum here, when you're talking about this information that is out there, you get this all the time. Within 3 days, we have had 2 reports from 2 people that have said, I've talked to people and say that it's Jaden Daniels. I've talked to people who know him and say it's J.J. McCarthy. It's absolutely nothing. It is, and it's not even lying season. I don't think any of these people are lying. They're saying these things.
I think what Adam Peters said was actually the truth. I think on March 25th, they have not seen everybody. And they're going to, with a decision like this, Adam Peters is in year 1. This is his first couple days, right, or couple weeks as the general manager of the Washington Commanders. You think that they might have a hunch, I think we're going to like Jaden Daniels more. But they've got a month to figure this out because they know Caleb Williams is going 1. So they know the rest of the field is available. So they're going to do their due diligence. Albert Breer tweeted this out today. Ahead of Friday's pro day, Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy had lengthy meetings Thursday in Ann Arbor with 3 teams, Patriots, Seahawks, and the Commanders. Seattle coach Mike McDonald was with McCarthy at Michigan in 2021. McCarthy's been excellent in that setting, meeting with teams. If you're Washington, of course you're going to meet with J.J. McCarthy. You're going to meet with Jaden Daniels. You're going to meet with Drake May. Hell, you might even meet with Michael Penix Jr. You might meet with Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler, not Sam Howell. But you're going to meet with a lot of these people because you're going to do your due diligence. You're going to do your work. I am not saying that there is no way that Washington selects J.J. McCarthy. They very well could. And maybe, like Jake, who tweeted me and said that he took some 50-1 and 25-1, hopefully those hit for you. But this, by no stretch of the imagination, JVT, and I think this is what we're getting at, what Jesse Palmer said today on the NFL Network is not a report saying the Commanders really like J.J. McCarthy. Could they ultimately come to that decision? Absolutely. But we did this last year. Will Levis became a massive favorite to be the number 2 overall pick. James Palmer, excuse me, from the NFL Network. So, yeah, it's a fun time, baby.
It means nothing. It means nothing. What we heard means nothing. Now, the books are going to move because of this, but as you mentioned, this is why it's always important with the reading of the reports and the wording of it. Everybody else thinks this. The actual people in charge making the decisions, we don't know. And by the way, isn't it going to be hilarious when Drake May is the 2nd overall pick?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to talk about all of these guys as we generally do, and then more often than not, we see the consensus fall in this draft, as we saw in the Joe Burrow draft, as I always reference, right, which was Joe Burrow, then Tua, and then Justin Herbert, as we all expected. But remember, Herbert was rising up the Dolphins' board the week before the draft. They liked him better. But they didn't draft him for some reason, which is weird.
Jaden Daniels is minus 170 to be the number 2 overall pick. Drake May plus 135. J.J. McCarthy plus 550. If I believe anything that we heard today, it was that Adam Peters was telling the truth. Yeah, we're still going to do our homework. We're going to meet with all these people. We're going to do our Zoom calls. We're going to see all these guys work out. More on this in Hour 3. J.P. Finley, who covers the Washington Commanders, will join us on the show. We'll get his thoughts, what he believes, what he does not believe. But up next, we'll get to our best bets for tonight. Some early thoughts on the Sweet 16 games as well. And Danny Hurley stirring the pot, isn't he, out there? Saying, the committee's out to get us.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
With so many bottles to choose from, it's easy to find your favorite, all at the lowest prices for over 30 years. Find what you love and love what you find at Total Wine & More. Drink responsibly and B21.
James Palmer. James. Got to say that. Get that in the head. You know, sometimes you just say something, you're like, yeah, he works in sports.
Everybody already forgot.
Yeah, that's true. All right, that's Jonathan Von Tobel.
Not now, because you brought it back up.
Yeah, that's true. I like to make fun of myself.
Tim got a name wrong earlier.
I did.
Never happens. He should be embarrassed. I accidentally called Butch Jones another word for a female dog one time when I was talking too quickly in the early days of VSiN. So it happens.
Yeah. I would say mine was not as bad as that.
No, not at all. Those are early. Those are earlier days, though. We were on satellite radio, so that didn't matter.
We do have some very interesting breaking news in the NBA, which we're going to get to in just a moment. Let's first get some best bets. I don't have anything on the Evansville-Seattle game about to tip off in the CBI quarterfinals. For those out there who are wondering, Chicago State, the mighty Cougars, did cover against the Fairfield Stags. So good job, Chicago State, in a 77-74 loss. I do have one play. We'll make it official here for the Sweet 16. But before I get to that, Mr. Von Tobel, NBA tonight, a busy card. Maybe not a great card,
Right.
but it's a busy card. There's lots of games. So what do we got for best bets tonight?
Yeah, like almost every game's got a double-digit spread again. We're starting to see this discrepancy in teams that have nothing to play for against teams that do. So 2 team totals on the card for me today. See if we can get these home. First off, one of the low-key things about the Houston Rockets' current run here is that they've really turned things around on offense. For those who don't know, Houston 10-1 straight up and against the spread in their last 11 games. They have cut their deficit for the last wild card down to a single game after Golden State lost yesterday. So this has been a very big push for Houston to get into the postseason. But part of this has been a really big push in their offensive efficiency. Over the course of these 11 games, second in the league in non-garbage time offensive efficiency, Houston is. And one of the big reasons why is they have really picked up their pace, Tim. In terms of possessions per game, they've gone from 99.1 possessions per game prior to the All-Star break to 101.5. So they're really ratcheting this thing up, averaging nearly 3 possessions more per game, and that's really helped them out, right? It's no Alperen Şengün, hasn't really dropped off because of that, because instead of playing against set defenses, you're ripping and running, or you're forcing turnovers and getting out in transition, and you can do that here against Portland. Portland has a subpar transition defense. It's an offense which has a knack for turning the ball over in the mid-20s in that regard, and just overall just not good defensively here. So I think this is one where, again, this is a team that is low-key, but not only covering numbers in Houston, but going over their total as well. I think it's 5 straight games which they've gone over and regularly surpassing their team total over Saturday. Went over on their team total against Utah, got there. Let's see if we can do that again here with the Houston Rockets. So over 118.5 for them.
I want to jump in real quickly because you mentioned something that's important, and we have the standings graphic. If we could throw that up there real quickly, because the Warriors got smacked yesterday, and at DraftKings right now they have the market of to participate in the play-in tournament. Mm-hmm. So the Lakers are minus 5,000 to participate in the play-in tournament. Probably fair odds, maybe a little high, because they could fall apart, I guess, theoretically, if someone got hurt. But I bring this up because the Golden State Warriors, and I had to double check. I'm like, is that right? The Golden State Warriors, to participate in the play-in, are minus 2,500. And the Rockets are plus 550. Currently, the Rockets, JVT, are only a game back of the Golden State Warriors. Now, based off of remaining strength of schedule, Houston is the 11th most difficult, and Golden State is 25th. So Golden State has a much easier road ahead of them. But would you look at Houston at plus 550 to participate in the play-in?
And what's baked into that price, which you have to realize, too, is that Golden State does have the season series against them. They have won the first 2 games.
Jump them.
Yep, exactly. So they have to not only catch them, but then they also have to surpass them when it comes to their record. And that's what's factored in. They have 1 game coming up left on the schedule. I think that's going to be on April 5th? Yeah, April 4th. So that's coming up in about a week. That could be a really big deal here, because you mentioned in terms of strength of schedule, the schedule going forward for Golden State, you're Miami, Orlando, some Laffer, Charlotte, and San Antonio, but Dallas, Houston, Dallas, it's pretty tough for what this team has to go through. But generally, you would think maybe they're going to be able to get through it. Part of the reason why they lost yesterday as well, outside of Minnesota having a really good second half, as you saw some of the fending off of comments from Steve Kerr. Steph Curry played 29 minutes in the game, despite the fact he really needs to stay alive in the play-in race. So I think still, given the fact that they own the tiebreaker, the Warriors are in a better position. But if those odds are enticing, you can totally understand, given how well Houston's played, that you can probably jump in there. But I think given the tiebreaker, that's enough to take me off of wanting to bet on Houston to get in.
Rockets have the same odds of making the play-in as J.J. McCarthy does to go number 2.
Yep.
Yeah, plus 550. All right. For me, we'll get to your other play here, Mr. Von Tobel, in just a second. I'm still diving into all of these games. I've kind of gone back and forth on a couple of them. Tennessee Creighton intrigues me a little bit there. Clemson, Arizona as well. But the one that I did play last night was Houston Duke. And I wondered how the market would go, and that's why I did contemplate not giving it out today, just because I want to know if the market's going to fall in love with Duke because of what we saw recently, which was a 93-55 obliteration of James Madison. And then late last night, we saw Houston, let's be honest, hold on for dear life with their 4 best players fouling out of the game. I believe the stat they showed on the broadcast was the first time a team won a game with 4 players fouling out since like 1987.
Yeah.
So when Jamal Shedd fouled out and they were up, I was thinking to myself, well, there goes all my Houston futures, because this one is not coming home. And then sure enough, a walk-on was able to hit 1 of 2 free throws and keep them a little bit at arm's length, and some poor execution, in my opinion, in the very closing of overtime. I just think stylistically, Houston is a pretty tricky matchup for Duke. Duke is more of a finesse team. They want to shoot the ball. And honestly, if Duke is shooting the ball at the way that they did against James Madison, I might be in some trouble here with this particular spot. But I do think, JVT, looking at how physical Houston is, and me banking on Jared McCain not hitting his first 6 3-pointers like he did against James Madison, I think this Houston team, with the physical nature that they play with, that they should bully this Duke team, and I'm going to lay the 4 with Houston here. Now, once again, I would say this. I wouldn't race to lay it. I see a couple juice 4s out there, so maybe we're moving that way. I think the public's going to be talked into Duke here, catching those points, how well they've been playing, and they have been playing pretty darn well as of late if you remove the final 2 games of the regular season. But I am not going to knock Houston all that much, even though you could certainly say Houston deserved to lose, considering that Texas A&M, as you look back to the game yesterday, missed how many free throws? I mean, they missed 13 or 14 free throws. They had an absolutely horrific night from the free throw line. But I think from a matchup standpoint, I think Houston is the side here. You could also price out what a money line rollover parlay would be, because I think the matchup on the other side, whether it be NC State or Marquette, is advantageous for Houston too. So Houston right now at DraftKings -105 to win the South region. I think they will win the South region, but I laid 3.5 last night at Circa. It's up to 4. Still would look at 4, but I think Houston for me is the way to go here in this Sweet 16 showdown on Friday night.
Don't disagree. I'd also say, too, for Duke, you look on the surface and go, man, this tournament, it's been pretty great for Duke. Vermont pushed them a little bit more than that final score would indicate, too, in that matchup right in the first round. So I would agree with the fact that I think Houston is pretty alive here in this spot.
Well, and I think, too, when you look at how that game started against James Madison, and I give a lot of credit to the way Duke came out with their mindset of like, all right, how is James Madison going to guard Kyle Filipowski? They get it in, they kick it out to McCain, he buries the 3, and that kind of sets the game off and running, so to speak. So I thought the first possession was in there on out. They were not able to turn the ball over. And that's also something lastly to note here on this game, as we'll talk about all week long. Duke doesn't turn the ball over all that much. Can Houston force them to turn the ball over, make them uncomfortable? That's what I am banking on with this Houston Cougars team. So laid the 4 with Houston. All right, you got one more play in the NBA?
Yeah, we'll do it real quick. Pacers team total over later tonight, playing the Clippers. Both teams coming in on a back-to-back. But, of course, both teams played in L.A. So, it's not really that strenuous when you're talking about playing on consecutive nights. And for the Indiana Pacers, they're just the makeup of a team that has given the Los Angeles Clippers trouble. The Clippers have had issues with faster teams that can pressure you within 4 feet of the basket, teams that like to play in transition. Pacers, of course, lead the league in points in the paint, 4th most fast break points since the All-Star break, and among the league leaders for the season, as we know. They slowed down a little bit since Pascal Siakam's come, but this is a team that what they do well has bothered LA all season long, not just outside of these 20, 22 games that they've really kind of been in this slump here. So over 113.5, still the available number there. By the way, we talked about that last one. Houston team totals up to 119.5. I bet that thing over 118.5. I think that's still playable at 119.5 as well. But those are the two. Over team total for Indiana and the over in the team total for Houston.
All right, 2 plays in the NBA for JVT. 1 play for Friday in the Sweet 16 in Houston, laying the 4. More to come. We'll break down all the Sweet 16 games a little bit later on in the show. But on the other side, 2 things. 1, Danny Hurley, as mentioned, stirring the pot. Us against the world. And number 2, breaking news out of the NBA with an investigation into some irregularities in the prop market.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
There's never been a better time to have skin in the game with DraftKings Sportsbook, because right now we have a VSiN exclusive offer for new DraftKings customers. Earn a $500 bonus bet for every $1,000 you wager. You can earn up to $2,500 worth of bonus bets in your first 3 days on DraftKings. Don't wait. Download the app now. Use code PRIME when you sign up and earn a $500 bonus bet for every $1,000 you wager now.
It's what a pro wants. It's It's what a pro needs, that promo, right?
Very disappointing commercial. Chet Holmgren, it's not the commercial itself. It's that Holmgren clearly isn't into it. You've really got to kind of sell it and belt it out. And you could clearly tell he was just like, okay, I'll just kind of sing this. No, you got to be in for the goofy commercial, and it was awful. F.
How many takes did that have? It was bad. It was bad.
Not many.
All right, we got some breaking news courtesy of ESPN. Adrian Wojnarowski has put out an article along with David Purdom and Brian Windhorst that Raptors forward Jontay Porter is under investigation by the NBA following multiple instances of betting irregularities over the past several months, that according to multiple sources to ESPN. At issue are prop bets involving Porter from games on January 26th and March 20th, multiple sources told ESPN. The NBA did not immediately respond to requests for comment. In the January 26th game, the Raptors versus the Clippers, there was increased betting interest on under for Porter props, which for the night were set at around 5.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. There was also an over-under for Porter's made three-pointers at 0.5. That night, Porter played just 4 minutes before leaving the game because of what the Raptors said was a re-aggravation of an eye injury he suffered 4 days earlier in a game against the Memphis Grizzlies. The next day, as part of a daily report to users on betting results, DraftKings Sportsbook reported that the under on Porter's three-pointers was the biggest money winner for bettors of any NBA player prop from games that evening. Porter played 19 minutes 2 days later, scored 12 points, had 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. On the March 20th game, a game against the Suns, Porter played just 3 minutes before leaving the game because of what the Raptors said was an illness and did not return. He did not score, attempted, or missed one shot, and had 2 rebounds. Sportsbooks had set his over-unders at around 7.5 points and 5.5 rebounds. The next day, DraftKings Sportsbook reported to its users that Porter's prop bets were the number one moneymaker for the night in the NBA.
Yeah, so there's a lot, obviously, here. Yeah. Now, you could immediately run to the conclusion that Jontay Porter was doing this himself. You could make the conclusion logically that Jontay Porter was informing people of what he was going to do that day in terms of, hey, I'm just not going to finish these games. It could be a massive coincidence. I highly doubt that that's going to be the case, the third option there. I'd also say this, because as we're getting increased stories in the world of sports gambling, Tim, right, where we're getting this intersection, this crossover of these professional athletes with these, going back the last few years as sports betting has exploded in popularity, I think a lot of people might rush to go, see, there's a problem. I would initially say, as I always have with all these stories, I'd argue that, see, there's a process in place to catch these things. And you have another instance here where in 2 games, there's some irregular activity. It's flagged. You get to the bottom of it. It leads to a suspension. And now you would assume an investigation into what is happening here. So I think that there's 2 ways to kind of rush to a conversation about this. But I would say in the many instances of sports betting and sports kind of crossing with one another and having some nefarious actions between the two, in every instance we've seen that an investigation or processes have taken place where it has been caught, and the person, a lot of the times, right, we know Alabama baseball, other spots, have been at least admonished in the proper way. So we'll see what happens with Jontay Porter. Again, we can go back to, I think a lot of people bring up, well, what about Temple? We don't know what happened with that Temple game.
Because they turned the season around after that game,
exactly.
too.
And maybe people would point to that and say, see, what was that? And we don't know what that is. But for the most part, I think it's, again, a solid look at, like, the processes in place to catch these sort of irregularities in today's day and age.
Yeah, and it's ironic that we get this story coming out moments after Shohei Otani had his first statement after all the reports regarding his translator and the betting that his translator had taken part of. So two stories that are popping up. And lastly, what I'll say on this, and we'll revisit it. There's not much more other than the story that's been reported by Woj and David Purdom and Brian Windhorst over at ESPN is, look, places behind us like Circa and all of these, sports books, You think they want this? They're policing it. They want there to be, as you just kind of hit on, they don't want anything like this to happen. So we will keep an eye on it, but certainly doesn't look good for Jontay Porter.
No, not at all. And I'd say this, because it's noted too how much he makes, about like $400K for the season. Again, I highly doubt it was Porter himself. I think it was one of those much similar to the Alabama baseball situation, right? Which is like, you tell your buddy, like, hey, I'm not feeling it today, whatever, and then you go out there and you get a rash of action, or, your buddy's a moron and he walks up to the counter and says, I've got inside info. I want to bet millions of dollars on Alabama baseball. But I also think, too, what was interesting out of this nugget, and this is not something that I knew, but sports betting is monitored by dedicated personnel for each NBA team. The league has a team of data scientists focused on sports betting anomalies, possible integrity issues, also works with third-party integrity monitors as well. So not only do the NBA have their own people tracking this and monitoring this sort of thing, but they also team with a third party outside. So, again, there's a lot of eyes on these sort of things to pick this sort of to pick these issues up. And for right now, Porter's going to be out of the lineup, but we'll see what happens with his career going forward. But interesting story nonetheless.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we'll run through all the NBA games top of the hour, but I do want to play this clip because it made me laugh regarding UConn and Danny Hurley. So Danny Hurley met up with Matt Norlander of CBS Sports following their victory over Northwestern. And UConn has covered both games so far in the NCAA tournament. If you go back to their run to a national championship last year, they covered all 6 of those games as well. And it feels like this is a bit of a runaway freight train. They're minus 230 now to win the East region. Helps out that Yale beat Auburn in that first round. They're now up to an 11-point favorite. But in classic coach fashion, it feels like he's pulling a Kirby Smart. He's trying to pull the old us against the world card. Take a listen to Coach Hurley following their win over Northwestern.
Okay, so it gives me a little bit more us against the world stuff that I could utilize because, I do think that the committee, has tried to make this as difficult as they can on us to do it. The Florida Atlantic, Northwestern, 8-9, obviously, the Auburn, San Diego State, and Illinois, and what they look like with Iowa State. We know what they. We know what they had in mind, and it just, it's more fuel on the fire.
So the first question that was posed was regarding the time slot for their game, which will be the first game in Boston on Thursday night. I would like to point this out. UConn played on Sunday evening, so they played a night game in Brooklyn, which is an hour and change away from Storrs, Connecticut. So got on the bus, probably got home, I don't know, around 11, maybe midnight. John Goulet, UConn homer, says 2.5. All right, sorry.
Arduous journey.
My bad. The team they are playing, San Diego State, was in Spokane, Washington, played the final game of the entire second round, and there's an article in the San Diego
Union Tribune
stating that the team got home into their beds at 3:30 in the morning, and unlike UConn, who has to load the bus up and drive an hour and a half to Boston to play on Thursday night, San Diego State will have to jump on a plane and fly across the country. So it's a little bit tougher for San Diego State from a travel standpoint. But you gotta love it. I love this when you hear from coaches. To this day, nothing's better than when a Georgia player said that you guys were all picking us to go 7-5. Nobody said that. You were a favorite in every single game. Nobody said that. But this is I love it.
So does he think like the committee was like, all right, guys, I'm going to screw UConn today, okay? Let's go. Let's see. Let's put all these teams in their bracket. Let's do this thing. Like, come on, relax. The conspiracy, but. Like you said, coaches do this whole sort of thing where they try to motivate players, and this is probably another tactic to do it. But if you have an ounce of logic, which you brought to the table, it's pretty easy to point this out.
Do they crush San Diego State?
I think they do. I mean, I laid it, so let's go Huskies.
UConn.
Stamp these frauds out.
Crushing fools on their way to another national championship. That's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Tim Murray. We'll run through the NBA slate tonight. Coming up top. Really helping out the teas there.